Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and welcome to a Trek podcast without a name. We weren't planning on doing a project, we weren't planning on starting this project till after Prodigy wraps, but Supernova Part 1 just rocked, and we
So
wanted to
good.
do a little preview review here.
hmm
We have several other co hosts to introduce you to in the upcoming broadcasts, but now I'd like to introduce you to Scott from Opinions No One Cares About.
Hello, YouTube.
Hi there, Scott.
Hey, Dustin.
So, what did you think of this episode overall?
Oh my gosh, this was so good. I was so into the action, the character development. Very slight hiccup with the pacing that I'm sure we'll get to later. But you had mentioned at one point that when we were talking about this earlier, that this episode is better than some of the Star Trek movies, and I am very inclined to agree. I don't think any of the episodes so far have had me quite on the edge of my seat so much, wondering what's going to happen next.
Right, they packed so much into just 23 minutes, and it's only half an episode. We're not even
Right.
done with it, and you could have ended it right where it was on a cliffhanger and been perfect for next season.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh my gosh, how long? I have to wait a whole. Wait, do we know when
Yeah,
like the
Lord
next
only
season?
knows. Yeah, I mean, after splitting it up into 10 and 10 here,
Yeah.
we have no idea when it'll come back. I
Oh,
mean, we don't
great.
even know when Strange New Worlds or Disco is coming back.
Huh. You
And I
think
mean,
they'd have been working better at that? I was really enjoying it this year when there was like new Trek almost every week, sometimes twice a week or twice in a week.
yeah, we had a break in July and August,
Mhm.
and then now coming up here in January before Picard,
Yeah.
and then we have no idea what's on the final frontier after that.
Right. Well,
So
can't wait.
here's a question we didn't even have on the list, but let's start here.
Okay.
Do you think we'll find Chakotay before the end of the season, or do you think that's going to be a next season problem?
Hmm. I think maybe we will. It's some of the things that have been set up at the end of this episode. Like the fact that, yes, basically all of Starfleet is beating the crap out of each other. But, you can't help notice the Protostar is the only one that's unaffected.
I did. I noticed that even by the end, still they were the only ones that still had blue nacelles and such.
Yeah, exactly. So there was that. And the fact, the diviner pulled out what it was almost kind of his catchphrase, we'll find a way because Gwen's his daughter, but also because they're Valnakat. See, one of the
Right.
things I noticed, like the way the Valnakat apparently die, which is really cool, even set against a backdrop of destruction like that. So
To
not
me,
only
that
did
made
he,
it even cooler.
yeah, so not only did he disintegrate, but I couldn't help but notice that Gwen was kind of glowing at the same time, which made me wonder if like he had found some way to, essentially if he had pulled kind of a Spock at the end of Wrath of Khan thing and put some of himself into Gwen, like Spock did into McCoy, like gave him his
Yep.
Katra. So, and especially like right before that, since she was saying she didn't know how to get to Solemn, I think maybe he gave her away, and it's entirely possible. The Protostar is the only ship that's left. Presumably, they will be able to get the Protocore working again, which did give me pause in this episode. We can talk about that in a minute. But it can travel great distances. It can get to Solomon at a point before Civil War's broken out. Although presumably that would also be before Chakotay even shows up.
Yeah, the time differential in
Yeah,
this really makes it an interesting thing because it
yeah.
happened in the future, but Protostar got sent into the past.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're somewhere in between in the present.
Exactly.
Present.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that might end
I
up still being an open-ended mystery for like next season.
I think that's where it's going to go because I think they're going to continue. I don't think the kids are going to get into Starfleet and it be this happy-go-lucky thing till at least season 3. I think they're
Right.
going to continue with the shtick about, just them being their own entity independent of Starfleet, but still trying to uphold Starfleet ideals and doing their own missions.
Hmm.
I think by the end of this, they're going to get thrown back or forward in time or whatever needs to happen, and that'll be the overarching arc of next season.
Yeah, I
That'd be
mean, it
my
does seem
guess.
like that wormhole is stable at least one point in the future. So maybe they can figure out a way to find out where it's going to open up in the past and use it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's got.
So, did when the protostar got boarded, did Gwyn actually seal the doors to the bridge? It didn't seem like she did.
It didn't seem like
Or
she
if
did
she,
anything, and I'm not entirely sure why.
or if she did, maybe there's a deleted scene somewhere where Dreadnought opens the door first and they just cut it for time or something.
Yeah, I mean, that would.
That would make a lot more sense, but as we saw it,
Dude, yeah, and if he did
it
that,
seems off.
yeah, and if Dreadnought did that while fighting off the kids at the same time, oh my gosh. I love that sequence so much, especially because we finally got the Murph versus Dreadnought fight I wanted.
Oh, that was awesome.
That was so good. Like
Even
I
though
literally just rewatched it before we did this, and that whole bit where Murph's not only causing trouble but jumping up in front of him, making faces, turn around and smacking his butt at
slapping
him.
his butt.
Ah, that was great. And it kind
Yeah,
of makes me
even
think if he was a little bit more mature, he might have stood a little bit more of a chance. Actually, I don't know if he has
yeah.
like another growth phase or whatever, but
Oh, I certainly hope so. I don't think we've seen the Murph's final form yet.
right.
Though I'm kind of surprised that it was like halfway through the first season that we got the transformation, but very cool.
Very.
Yeah, that fight scene, Dreadnought should have pasted them really easily, and he did. And we
Kind of.
can't
Yeah.
kill kids on a kids show,
No,
especially not
no,
the
no,
main
no.
characters.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I understand that, and that just the way they picked themselves up and became a cohesive unit after that, that was just, so nice.
It does raise a question though, where Essentia or the Vindicator or whatever you want to call her said right before they beamed over, don't spare anybody. And that was kind of important because, the diviner at the same time is like, except Gwyn, because, she's my child. And Essentia like, yeah, except Gwyn.
Yeah, about that. Sure.
She got far too much of a sense of kind of nationalism in a way, or speciesism. Like saying like Gwyn's not one of them. Like, sorry, I didn't grow up on Solomon, whatever.
Yep. So, in the vein of Essentia, who gave Essentia the order that was mentioned to Jellicoe about disabling the Protostar's shields?
I still don't know. I've been racking my brain to think like if that was something that Janeway
Yeah,
had said in a previous episode or something.
she might
Um,
have, but I'm not sure either.
or like, did it have something to do with just the previous episode? Like when they were close enough where Tysus, linked their warp bubbles and was firing on them. I don't know if that was an order that still stood, which would make sense because it like literally just happened. But
Yep.
yeah, but clearly Jellicoe didn't know because I've said this before. Jellicoe gonna Jellicoe, and he just kind of went with it.
Yeah, he's been a really interesting dynamic. He just pops up and does his Jellicoe thing for a few seconds on the view screen
Mm-hmm.
in the season, and it's been fun to see Ronnie Cox back in the role after 3 decades.
Yeah, but Jellicoe is definitely better when used sparingly.
Yes, fully agreed.
What we got?
So, who told the USS Centaur to fire torpedoes when everybody else is using phasers against the Protostar? And we even know that phasers are more effective against shields, and they're not trying to kill the Protostar, just board it. So,
Right.
that's a really great question.
Yeah, I think somebody needs to be brought to task for that. But also, as far as like, the pacing of the battle, as it were, at the time, it was at the time, it was kind of a convenience to set up, I think, Jenkum's little maneuver there.
Mm-hmm.
The slippery dipsy doodle. And I don't care what Dell says, that's a perfectly good name. Although the Pog
Yes,
maneuver, that also works.
I think that you've coined a new term in Star Trek history.
Yeah. History. But, I mean, we're going to talk about Star Trek history. This is something back at the beginning of the episode. So Janeway's in the brig. She's got the security officer watching over her. And you can tell that she sees her face, but somehow she didn't recognize that the alien was a Bernari, a race that she had only encountered before in the Delta Quadrant during Voyager. Admittedly, I did have to look this up because I'm not up to season 5 yet, but it really stuck with me because, like, wait a minute. Okay, you've got a different kind of nose that I've never seen. I need to know what this is.
Yeah, and more than that, how it's not even just that Janeway doesn't recognize her. How did this species from the middle of the Delta Quadrant end up joining Starfleet, other than the universe seeming small thing that Prodigy has going on as a whole?
Yeah, it's a little Star Warsy like that. Yeah, it doesn't
I
seem like
mean,
it hasn't been that long since Voyager came back, has it?
I believe the number's 7 years,
7
where we are in Prodigy.
7 years, and this. Oh well, she's an ensign, but she was apparently a kid at the time. But she grew up enough to somehow get back to the Alpha Quadrant and enlist in Starfleet.
Exactly.
That seems cutting it a little fine.
And as far as ensigns in Starfleet, we had this other question about how when Essentia boards the Protostar and disables Janeway, she uses her Starfleet voice authorization. How would a ship that was commissioned before she was ever in Starfleet take her voice authorization? That one threw me off.
I can only surmise it has something to do with the living construct and the fact that there is some Valnicott programming on the Protostar. Other than that, yeah, I got nothing. Unless they programmed it to recognize the voice patterns of like all the Valnicott who traveled back in time, just to ensure their mission.
Yeah, I suppose anything's possible there. I can see
Yeah,
that.
that's about all I can really think of.
We got to look pretty deep to explain conveniences sometimes.
Right? Ooh.
Oh, we are tearing through these questions pretty quick.
Right?
Yeah, so there's a planet in the background of this battle, which isn't utilized in any way for some reason.
That planet infuriated the heck out of me. I was watching like, why don't you go land on the planet? Yes, they might fire on you from space, but they're going to wonder what you're doing. Now, maybe it's possible it wasn't M-class and they wouldn't have been able to leave the ship. But like, I was trying to invent technobabble, like going on, like to try to explain it. Like, let's go down to the planet and we'll broadcast a subspace distortion pulse or something to disrupt communications. Like, is that a thing we can do? I don't know how your technobabble works.
That does sound like what we're probably going to see coming up here, though. As you mentioned, the Protostar is the only one that's not affected right now. I think they're the ones that are going to affect the change and bring an end to this. But I'm going to be really disappointed if there's no actual supernova by the end of this two-parter.
That's a fair point. By the time it got to the end, I was thinking, wait a minute. We didn't see an actual supernova. So what is this title about?
And more confusingly, the first and only game that's out right now for Prodigy is titled Supernova, but it has nothing to do with the plot of this episode.
Does that have to do with actual stars exploding?
I don't think so. I haven't actually played it, but I saw in somebody
goodness.
else's review that had played it, saying that it has nothing to do with this episode. Thanks, Jesse Gender, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, yeah, that's even more confusing. Like, no,
Yeah,
I got
little
nothing.
tidbits. So, one of the things we want to add to this show coming up is a little news segment, which normally with a bunch of people we probably wouldn't do till later in the show.
Right.
There's not much news. The one thing I had seen this week is a confirmed bit that Julian Bashir will
That's the
be
thing. Yep.
in Section 31. Now, this has been reported. I can't remember exactly where I saw it. It was reported by somebody that said a trusted source. So,
Right.
I mean, right now, the Section 31 as a whole has been a show that's been confirmed for 3 years with no follow up on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume it's probably because Michelle Yeoh was originally slated to be the head of it, and now she's become much bigger and much more prestigious in Hollywood.
Yeah. I never did. I haven't didn't get to see Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I heard it was incredible.
It's the best movie I've probably seen in the last decade. I bought it the day it came out,
Damn.
and it was
Okay.
easily worth it.
Okay.
It's so much fun.
Right. Yeah, but as far as that news, I think the part I heard was that yes, he was confirmed to be part of Section 31, but also to make an appearance on Lower Decks. But
Yes.
that was with somebody like tagging him, asking him to confirm it, and I don't know about the response or anything. But that would make sense considering we just found out, that Will Boimler is apparently part of Section 31 now.
Yeah, this is the whole Section 31 thing that we really haven't seen much of here in a while is really, it's all coming back around
Right?
together. And to go a bit more off topic here, with Lower Decks and how they set up a few things like the William Boimler,
Mhm.
how do you think they'll utilize Jeffrey Combs's Agamus and what was the other one we were introduced? Oh, and Peanut
Peanut Hamper.
How do you think they'll utilize them in a future season of Lower Decks?
Well, part of me thinks they're obviously going to team up and figure out a way to escape the Daystrom Institute. I wonder how many of the other supercomputers they would bring along with them. And then I'm not even sure where they would go from here, or be something if they showed up on Prodigy and be like, oh, the Federation's already destroying itself. What are we going to do?
I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be really fun towards the end with the Texas class ships, if they had these automated ships were taken over by computers. But
Right, yeah.
Those 3 prototypes are gone, so that's not
Thank
a
goodness for
thing.
that.
Here's my hope. I doubt we're going to go this way, but I hope they take over the Cerritos and they like in this episode of Prodigy where the kids and everybody, the universal translators don't work. What I think would be awesome is if Jeffrey Combs gets plugged in and then the translator is all Jeffrey Combs. So we finally get that joke about Jeffrey Combs playing every character in a very Star Trek centered piece of trivia.
I want to see that so bad now.
Right?
Yes, that would be, well, not exactly the same, but it would be similar to that one episode of Doctor Who where everyone in the world, with the exception of the Doctor and like a couple of people, get turned into the Master. Although that wasn't really so much John Sim trying to play himself playing other people. That's just a whole world worth of John Sim, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, this would be so much better for Combs. Oh my gosh, that'd be incredible. Oh, that's on my wish list. Is it too late to ask Santa for that? We're going to be here, what? Yeah, 12 hours? Yeah, it's probably too late.
So to tie that back into the episode we're actually talking about,
right?
What did you think about when the translator went offline and giving Gwyn a chance to go back to her, what we originally saw her in the first episode as an epic translator that speaks all the languages?
It actually took me a second, like when everybody was freaking out on the bridge of the Protostar, and then it focused on Gwyn. I was like, oh wait, that's right. She learned a bunch of different languages, didn't she? But like before that, I felt it was just kind of like the Valnicott's plan adding fuel to the fire, because you take out the universal translator and suddenly nobody can understand each other, so they can't even resolve the problem they have of their ships blowing each other up.
Right. It went back to the episode of DS9 Babel for me, and
Yeah.
the one. Is it the one where they encounter the sphere in Discovery, where they lose the translator there, and then Saru has to translate for everybody for a while?
I'm
I
so
think it
bad
was
with
that
Discovery, but probably.
I think it was the one where they encounter the sphere for the first time. But
That sounds
yeah,
about
we've
right.
seen it a few times in Trek, and I think this was probably the best one because it gave Gwyn a chance to use that skill that we'd been introduced to that she really hasn't had a chance to use in the series yet.
Yeah, that was part of the character development in this episode I loved, but not as much as Dal. I got to go off on a rant here. Okay.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah. So, I mean, we started the series with Dal specifically, trying to get off of Tars Lamora, and it looks like he's just doing it for himself because he doesn't like bring anybody along or anything. He's just, looking out for number one, basically. Next thing you know, we find he sets himself up as the captain of this highly advanced starship. And it didn't look like he was taking it seriously at all in the beginning. He's just like, oh, great, I got this ship I can tool around the galaxy in. But, as time wore on, for me, I think it started in this one scene in First Contact when they were down on the Samari planet and the sand's whipping all around him, and Gwen's like, use your tricorders, and he actually pulls his out too, and I was like, oh, he's actually doing what he needs to do. He's like learning Starfleet stuff. Okay. And it's just kept going through this whole thing where he's become more and more of a captain and more of a good person, and he doesn't let the fact that he found out his personal history, the fact that it didn't go the way he wanted to at all because he doesn't actually have a family. He doesn't let that stop him from anything. And then in this episode where he found out that being an augment meant that he wouldn't get into Starfleet, and it took him all of 5 seconds to just like take the gun from Gwen and be like, fine, I can't have my dream, but I'll make sure you guys get yours. Like, that was immediate for me. I was just like, okay, not only does this kid need to be in Starfleet because he clearly gets it, this is like just immediate needs of the many overweighing the needs of the few. I've said it in other places. I will cement it here live. Dal RL is one of the best characters in Star Trek history. I've just absolutely loved his character arc through this entire season. I think he has had more character development in this one season than it took a whole series for some characters.
I agree.
And I hate to say it, but the example that popped into my head immediately was how they brought back Nurse Chapel for Strange New Worlds and actually gave her a personality this time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, in general, this show has had more character development in one season than any other show has in its first season of Star Trek, easily.
Yeah.
I didn't like Dahl at the beginning. It's like, okay, I can see where they're probably going with this. We're going to start with this lowly goof-off character that's just trying to get away from it all, and he's going to build into something bigger. And he really has. What I'll say is last week's episode, it's a great kids episode of television. It's a lot of fun, but I predicted correctly that nothing that happened actually changed anything going forward. We had some fun moments where Janeway was Dahl, and then that touched off some things between her and the kids on the Protostar. But the Dahl being awkward in Janeway's body thing wore thin for me pretty quickly in that episode. So to see him come back around this episode and just go that much higher in his character development after an episode where it kind of went sideways for me.
Yeah.
I thought it's brilliant. And we've still got an episode left to go.
Right.
This goes.
Absolutely. I cannot wait.
Do you
But that does raise the...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was actually going to get into the last question it has talking about where it goes from here. Um, the way this ended just kind of reminded me of the sometimes the circular logic of time travel, because Essentia was doing this whole thing to prevent the Federation from ever making contact with Solemn, and now presumably they all Starfleet's just destroying itself from the inside, so they won't be able to make contact with Solemn, which should mean in the future, yes, there's no civil war. Yes, the Valnakat are probably much better off. But at the same time, there's going to be no need for them to go back in time and try to fix things. So that means they wouldn't fix things, and so on until my brain hurts. So what is going to happen now?
That's a great question. This whole thing is also a time loop, so then that gets into the question of, well, you sent these people back to change their future, but if they change it, would they be there to go back to change it?
Right.
The good old logic loop. Temporal mechanics,
Yeah.
Miles O'Brien's favorite.
Yeah, I prefer the kind of time loops where it's like the same thing just keeps happening over and over again, like cause and effect. Or what was that? They've done. Again, I'm still only in like season 3 of Voyager, but they've done a time loop at least twice, because there was a second episode, and then
there's one in season 7 with Chakotay, and that's incredible.
Yeah, well, there's this one that's kind of it's not.
Are you thinking of the Year of Hell?
No, it's only like kind of. There's only kind of a time loop in it, and then it's kind of not really, because it's just Janeway doing it in her head. It's Coda, the one where she's kind of dying, but there's an alien in her head. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and you find out what happens when you die.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a different podcast I was watching. They were talking about the last episode and trying to remember when the first mention of Janeway's sister was. It was in that episode.
Oh.
But yeah, anyway.
Do you think we'll touch on the kiss between Dal and Gwyn next episode, or do you think we won't get back to it till next season?
I mean, it went long enough between episodes in this season, because the first time I remember there being any sort of indication that there might be a little bit more between them was, I want to say, whichever episode was the first part of the murder planet, because they had like this almost a little moment where they had the eye contact going and all, right before they realized they could navigate on the planet by the stars instead of the ever-changing landscape. But I don't feel like there's been anything between that and this. Is there? No, I don't think so. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that's going to have to be resolved in one way or another. I don't know how soon. I kind of hope it isn't like in this next episode where they kind of have a moment again and she decides to kiss him back for whatever reason. Like maybe bring out just
that might be perfect.
Yeah.
That was a really crushing moment, though. Like,
yeah,
man, Dal thinks that she's finally coming around him, and really, she just wants to crush his dreams ever so slightly.
Like, I'm sorry, I don't like you like that, and also, you can't go on Starfleet.
What did you think about the when Dreadnought and Essentia take off through the dome of the bridge, and then not only does a force field close it, but it's like self-sealing glass?
I mean, it's better than self-sealing stem bolts, but that was really cool. The one thing I had the one issue I had was, like, just stop talking to her, okay? Two of you are holding, like, Dal and Jankum are both holding phasers. Dreadnought might be fast, but I don't think he's that fast. Just shoot her while she's talking. You're letting the villain monologue.
I thought that too.
Yeah, Essentia was just total cliche villain going through this. She had the monologue. There was that point where she was fighting with Gwyn, and Gwyn gave her, the scar.
Mm-hmm.
Which I couldn't help notice. I don't think that even bled. Like, did the Valnakat bleed? Is that a thing?
If they do, it's blue.
Yeah, right. Like from a plot standpoint, the one thing I always hate, I don't know what this is about me, I just hate it when villains' plans actually work.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, do you think we'll see her back to round out that arc next episode, or do you think she, like Damon Nandi, we won't see her back till next season or so?
Yeah, we're definitely not going to see her till next season. Essentia, though, um, yeah, I think they would most likely wrap things up with her in the next episode. Um, and then just, be able to set up a whole bunch of new and different stuff happening in season 2. I don't think they're going to leave that unresolved for however long it takes for Prodigy to come back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, Scott?
Let me think. I literally just finished watching this. Did I have any other issues? Translator. I think the only other issue I have is that, like, I really wanted to know, if not the name, if like all the different classes of ships that were surrounding the Protostar. Because at one point, I swear I saw an overhead shot or like a shot from behind of like an old school Annex class ship. I was like, is that looks like Archer's Enterprise? But I'm pretty sure that wasn't it. But
there is
I just
another similar design that I can't remember the name of the class of. That's right
in
the T in this era.
Yeah, there's somebody responded to one of my tweets is like, do you mean this one right here, this Akira class ship? I was like, no, because I don't know what an Akira class ship is, but if that's what it is, then no, that wasn't it.
Yeah, there was a few Akiras, and I honestly don't feel like I know all the classes in there, but I think most of them were fairly well-traveled ships that we've seen in Trek. I think there was a Miranda class. There was obviously the Defiant.
Yes.
The Sovereign, not even just Sovereign class, the Sovereign which itself, may or may not be the original ship in that class.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the Defiant, I don't know about you, but I was kind of hoping it was reassigned because I really didn't want any of the DS9 gang to be on that ship.
Yeah, we have no idea at this point.
Yeah.
In theory, it could be Captain Nog.
That's true.
I mean, he probably isn't a captain yet, but
right.
I assume, if anything, he's probably on board that ship.
Yeah.
Maybe as like a lieutenant commander or something by this point. Because this is about 7 years after the Dominion War.
Yep. But if he did become captain that quick, that would help to explain at least some of the reason why, almost 1,000 years in the future, he's got a ship named after him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I told you in our pre-broadcast, the thing that I learned that was huge for me that I had no idea about until this episode was that the Defiant, not only when it got to its second Defiant class iteration, and it was the Sao Paulo, and they gave him dispensation to change the name to Defiant. Yeah. Not only was the name changed, but the NCC registry it already had as the Sao Paulo was changed to the same NX registry number as the first Defiant.
That's something.
Which is confusing, at least add an A, or it's definitely not a prototype anymore. So why is it NX? It's just a weird question. And I had no idea until then that even in the last episodes of DS9 where you see it, it's that NX registry, which I'm just assuming they didn't want to repaint the model.
Yeah, most likely, yeah.
But yeah,
I think that's all I got.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. We may change this rating system in the future, but if you were going to give this out of 10 and you can give it 0.5s, what would you give this episode?
Okay. Oh, that's it. The one little thing I had with the pacing, that would probably knock it down to a 9.5, because it seemed like there was a lot of time that elapsed between the Bernari officer letting Janeway out of the brig and giving her a comm badge. Long time between that and her showing up on the ship to issue orders, which it kind of felt like that could have been something she could have done en route. But besides that, based on everything else I said, this is absolutely a 9.5 out of 10 episode.
Yep, I'm gonna give it the same. I
Right.
mean, everything's got chance, room for improvement. So
Yeah.
10 would be very rare, but yeah, there was just a couple little convenience pieces that are like, why? But
Mhm.
overall, I mean, just that action level and the
Yes.
character development, everything is there that you want, and they pack it so well into 23 minutes.
Yes, they did. Hmm.
Well, everybody, thanks for joining us in our first preview podcast. We'll see you again sometime in the next couple of weeks. We may do a year-end wrap-up of all the 2022 stuff in Star Trek. We may not be back till the 7th of January, where we'll recap the whole season of Prodigy.
Mhm.
And otherwise, thanks for joining us,
Mhm.
and we'll see you again next time.
Yeah, we don't know how to sign off yet either, but